Hi. Oh, interesting lighting. I did plan on making this feel cozier, but we've got one of those rare sunny days in British autumn, but I thought I'd show off my very autumnal decor in my bedroom currently. You can't see him. This is Bartholomew. He's called Bartholomew because that's the name that he came with, because Jellycats, they come with names, but I decided to rechristen him Bartholomew. He is one of my prized possessions. My girlfriend got him me. Am I gonna overshare on the internet? Yeah. I'm terrified of all things medical, and I had to get my smear test done. So my girlfriend bought me this as a well done for getting my smear test. If you are a person with a cervix over the age of 25, get your smear test. This might be quite a long video because I am going to tell you about basically every single autumnal, spooky, gothic, cozy, basically all of the books that I own that fit the theme of this time of year, and I will bend a theme to my will, so there's quite a lot of them. I've tried to bring some order to this video because there is just so many books that I want to tell you about, so I've categorised them as best I can, and we're going to start with basically my favourite books that fit this theme. And I have noticed that a lot of my favourite books fit this theme. I love this time of year for reading anyway, not really for like the mental health, but you know, that's why I read. It's going to be a long one. Get a cup of tea, get a cup of coffee, get a hot chocolate, whatever tickles your fancy, and get a notepad to write these down. I thought I would start with my all-time favourite book, The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. In my opinion, and also in the author's opinion, this is the ultimate October book. This is the ultimate Halloween, spooky season, autumn, October book. October is an important month in this book, even though it is set throughout other months. It's cozy, it's magical, it's heartbreaking. If, like me, at this time of year, you crave just magic, and anything that's going to warm your heart, warm your soul, just warm you in general because it's so freaking cold, then pick this book up because it will do all of those things. I could speak for days about this book because I love it so much and it's very, very special to me. This video is already going to be long enough, so I'm going to put it down now. This next one, it leans more towards winter, but I'm still going to include it because I think you still can read it at this time of year, and also living in the UK, autumn and winter, there's not much of a difference. So it's The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. No, this video isn't just going to be Erin Morgenstern. It couldn't be just Erin Morgenstern because she's only written 2 books. Erin Morgenstern herself has said that this book is autumn and this book is winter. Read this one and then read this one. I'm still going to include this book because it still has all of those like cozy libraries. It gives the vibe. It gives the vibe. It definitely does feel colder than this book. This one is a little bit more chaotic than The Night Circus. Even though the storytelling is not linear in this book still feels less chaotic because this one intertwines like other stories that link into the main plot. There's a lot going on, but I love it. Sticking with the sort of like, I would say this is more of a winter book, but I'm still going to recommend it in this video, The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. There is something more wintry about this. It's like, they all wear furs, it's cold, but look at that cover and tell me it's not an autumn book. But again, it's the same with The Starless Sea. It's still cozy, even though I wouldn't say this is cozy. Is this book cozy? No, it's really not, but it still feels cozy. I don't know how to explain it. I haven't got the words.
I can't really explain it. I haven't got the words.
But it has like people keeping each other warm, which is great. I don't know how to describe it, but like that like visual of being able to see your breath. This book gives that. Again, I can't really explain it, I haven't got the words.
It's a feeling that you can't control.
If you're looking for a dark fantasy to read this autumn winter, make it this one. It's gory, it's gruesome, check all the things you need to check before you read it, don't give it to your children. It just has like the like forest vibes, the like pine needles on the floor, crisp crunchy forest floor, that stuff, like that's why it's on my autumn list. It's also one of my all-time favourite books. More of an autumnal book, Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reid. This one is definitely more autumnal. It's giving September, which is a bit late now because it is October. It's sort of giving that like it's getting cold but still a bit warm vibe. This is set more in the city. This is set in woods and wilderness and like ancientness, whereas this is a bit more modern. It's not modern at all, but it feels more modern compared to this. This is giving fairy tale. It's based off the Juniper Tree, a Grimm's fairy tale. So again, giving like wrap it warm with a drink, read something kind of gruesome. And the next two fall into like dark academia, but they're very different books. One is If We Were Villains by Emma Rio. This is Shakespeare. It's elite drama school, it's drama students. This is definitely one for Shakespeare fans. If you love Shakespeare, you'll love this. It gives that like campus vibes, dark academia, criticism of academia, criticism of elite drama schools. Awful characters. Awful people. These people are horrible. This is one that will definitely keep you reading. Like if you're wanting something that you're going to pick up and not want to put down. All Life and Gifts by Caroline O'Donoghue. This is the first in a trilogy. Maeve, who goes to is it an all-girls school? I think it is. I think it's an all-girls Catholic school. She finds some tarot cards in her detention and it turns out she just can naturally read them, except a card keeps coming up which isn't actually a card in the deck of cards, and then her best friend goes missing. It's witchy, it's urban fantasy, it's queer. Again, this could fall more into the sort of wintry side of things, but it starts in the autumn. There we go. Next we're going to talk about some classics, because spooky season, it's the time for gothic books, and a lot of gothic books are classics. Not all of these are gothic. One of them isn't gothic, but the rest are. I feel this is the perfect time to pick up a gothic novel, pick up a classic, feel a little bit academically elite. For those of you that are going, what is Gothic? What is Gothic literature? Gothic literature is based all around Gothic architecture. Yeah, we did get a whole literary craze around architecture. Talking about how silly that sounds, my first recommendation is a piss take of the Gothic genre. We've got Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. I know, I can hear you going, Gothic? Spooky season? Jane Austen? Those things don't go together. No, not usually, but if you're looking for a Jane Austen to read at this time of the year, make it Northanger Abbey, because this is basically a whole satirical take on the Gothic genre. The main character is obsessed with Gothic novels and starts to believe that she is in one. Next up we have a classic, pardon the pun, within the Gothic genre, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. You hear Gothic, you think Bronte. The atmosphere, the moors, the sorrow, it is the perfect time to read this. If you're thinking, where is the other Bronte? I know there's three, sorry Anne.
Sorry to this man.
Jane Eyre, why isn't it on this list? I've not read it, but I'm going to go ahead and recommend it anyway, because I hear people like it. I am going to read it one day. I'm recommending this one because I've actually read it and enjoyed it. Another absolute classic of the Gothic genre, we've got Dracula. I love this. I also have a slight obsession with Whitby as a place. It'd be a bit weird if I didn't love this book. It's also an allegory for being gay. But another one, it's atmospheric, it's got the whole like damsel in distress, which is another big trope of the Gothic genre. Highly recommend reading this at this time of year. Another one that I haven't read yet, I am actually currently reading it, but I'm going to include it anyway, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and I'm loving it so far, so I'm going to throw it in. Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Allegory for like corruption, being gay. Another one where just the atmosphere of the writing, perfect fit for this time of year. And if you love reading about sad repressed gays. And then finally, this one is not Gothic. I wouldn't call it Gothic, but is a perfect read for this time of year. Bleak House. The opening description of this book is what makes it just absolutely perfect to read this time of year because it will throw you straight into living in England in the cold months. I actually studied this opening passage for a critical reading short course that I did before I went to uni. I knew I had to read the rest of the book, which turned out to be a very, very long book, over 1,000 pages, but, you know, we moved. It opens in London in November in Victorian England, and it's just so grim. If I could read out loud, I would read you the opening passage, but unfortunately, I'm dyslexic, and it's a travesty if I try and read out loud. Do we have any more classics to recommend while I'm here? Don't think so. The next lot are what I would describe as dark academia or academic vibes. Let's start with Ava Reid. This one didn't quite make it into the top spot. I don't know whether that's because I read it at a time where I was just not really functioning, to be honest. Last year wasn't great for me mentally. I read this book over about 8 months, and that's because I was just basically a slug at that point. However, still a beautifully written book, and still perfect to read at this time of year. It is A Study in Drowning. This definitely fits into the dark academia sort of vibe. It's about Effie. She goes to this elite school. She wants to study literature, but unfortunately girls aren't allowed to study literature, so instead she goes to the School of Archaeology. She is chosen to potentially rebuild this house, who is just so happens to be owned by the recently deceased author of her favourite book. This deals with discussions around anti-Stratfordian theory, which is the theory that Shakespeare was not Shakespeare and that Shakespeare did not write Shakespeare's plays. Because for me personally, someone who is a theatre, I wouldn't call myself a theatre scholar, theatre student. I study theatre at uni in an academic sense because I go to a Russell Group uni, which is a research-based uni, so I study theatre with research-heavy elements. As someone who has looked into the theory of whether Shakespeare was Shakespeare, there's enough evidence out there, academic evidence out there, to prove that Shakespeare was Shakespeare. I do think this is an interesting take on it, but I don't really like things that perpetuate that myth. Good book anyway. Has a beautiful romance in it, and it has the type of romance that I really like, that I can't really put my finger on how to describe it.
I can't really explain it.
Speaking of the kind of romance that I love, A Far Wilder Magic, these two couples are very similar, but in my opinion this one is just superior. So yeah, it says in the back of this one, an intoxicating love story set against a mythical hunt. So the reason this one is in the sort of academia pile is because one of the characters wants to be an alchemist. So there's like an academic element to the story. It's also just sort of, again, it's set in nature, kind of feels a bit cold. I promise I can actually use words. Just not when you put a camera on me. But if you want something, again, beautiful, magical, atmospheric, this is that. More along the traditional sense of dark academia, as in criticism of academia, we have Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This is based on Arthurian legend. I don't want to say too much about this one because I went into this pretty blind and it was incredible. It's an interesting one because Bree, who's the main character, is 16, but it is a higher education setting because Bree goes to this uni like early. So it's a younger character, but it's set in a university. If you like books that have criticism of our society woven within them, Legendborn. Another pretty staple dark academia, we have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is set in Yale. It follows the secret society that gets up to all sorts of shenanigans. There's ghosts. It's great. It's dark. It puts the dark in dark academia. And unfortunately, I did not rate the next book in this series, Hellbent. I didn't enjoy it. But this one still holds up, and I think it can be read as a standalone. But if you're looking for ghosty, ghouly, dark academia, this one puts the academia in dark academia. We have this tome, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. You could kill someone with this. I'm not going to. This follows two feuding magicians who see the art of being a magician from two very different aspects. One is a very theoretical magician, the other is a practical magician. They don't like each other. And then there's some like fae. It kind of falls into the gothic with a damsel in distress. It feels quite Dickensian in its setting, and it's long. It's very long. One of the things that makes it particularly academic is these little footnotes that run throughout the entire book that basically go into the history and the academia that is in the world of this story. So it has academic world building. And then finally, in this section, this is less academia, more philosophy, but I feel like that still fits. And it's Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Very different in size. Yeah, Susanna Clarke is wild. She wrote this and then like about a decade later came out with this. Piranesi is one that I'm not gonna say a thing because you've just got to read it, but I will say labyrinth, mystery, philosophy. Read it. These next ones are really moving into the sort of Halloween spooky type books. Like, let's face it, it's spooky season. We've got to be reading something that's a bit spooky. These range from genuinely scary to vibes, you know? Some of these are witchy, some of these are, whoa, the lighting is really lighting right now. Some of these are witchy, some of these are ghosty, some of these are just full-blown monsters. Again, it's just vibes. A lot of these are just vibes. I can't really explain it, I haven't got the words.
I can't really.
We have our first children's book. This is a middle grade. I think it is important to continue reading children's books, even when you are no longer a child. Firstly, things that are made for children, they're safe. I'm just going to put it out there. No matter who you are, sometimes you just want to feel safe. And children's media, books, movies, TV shows, whatever, they're safe because they're made for kids. Secondly, it means that you have a recommendation there if someone asks you for a children's book or if a child asks you for a recommendation, because, you know, you might have children in your life. And also because just because they're made for children doesn't mean that they're not great pieces of media. This first book is a children's book. It does have a sequel, but I've only read the first one. But it's The Monsters of Rookhaven. I'm going to try and do this so that you can actually see the book cover. This is a haunted house. It's a house that's full of monsters. Monsters live there. It's a family of monsters. It also has just the cutest illustrations. Like, look at those flowers. Gorgeous. That's another thing about children's books, they're illustrated. But yeah, it's a really cute story. It's still spooky, it still gives that same spooky season vibes, but again, it's suitable for kids, so it's not actually scary. So if you're the kind of person that wants to enjoy like Halloween spooky season but is easily scared and doesn't actually like scary things, that's me, by the way. Something like this is brilliant. I probably should read the next one. Brilliant, perfect for this time of year, whether you are a child or not. We'll go from most child-friendly to least child-friendly. This next one, she's not a children's author. No, I tell a lie, she is a children's author. She has got children's books. She's not necessarily known for being a children's author, but she does write for children, and this one was not marketed as a children's book, but I definitely think that you could give it to a kid. Like, maybe 10 and up. And that's Gallant by V. Schwab. Again, haunted house story. So the main character is 16, but like I said, there's nothing really in it that I would say is particularly inappropriate for kids. Or if you just don't want to read something that's that scary, but still is spooky and has that sort of creepy vibes. Gallant by V. Schwab. Schwab is just a brilliant writer. Beautiful, lyrical, atmospheric. All the things I love. This next one is a YA. It has disabled rep, because he is a bilateral amputee. I think that's... both of his legs are amputated from the knee down. 16 Souls by Rosie Talbot. This is set in York, the most haunted city in Europe, I believe. Maybe UK, I don't know. It's haunted. And it's about a kid who can see ghosts. So again, if you're looking for ghost stories, spooky vibes, but not actually too scary. And it also has a really cute romance in it. I need to read the sequel, but highly recommend this first one. We're moving into the sort of higher YA now, like higher age range YA. We've got Our Crooked Hearts by Melissa Albert. This is a YA urban fantasy, it's witchy, it's kind of thriller-esque. I would say that this is like the US version of All Our Hidden Gifts. Supernatural, missing people, does get a little bit creepy at times. It also has like, you know, mother-daughter trauma. The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. It's about witches with elemental powers. I think at a school. Do they go to a school? Yes. She's training. So all of these witches are based on a season. All of their powers linked to a season, and when it's their season, they're the most powerful. But we follow, I think, is she called an elemental? Like, her power is all of the seasons. So this book does cover all of the seasons, but I mean, if you can tell by the cover, you read it in autumn. You read it in autumn, don't you? The first book in the Edinburgh Nights series, The Library of the Dead by T.L. Hutchue. Set in Edinburgh, another haunted city, ghosts, someone that can talk to ghosts. Again, if you like a haunted city book and ghosts, this is the book for you. And finally, we have Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. Was I a huge fan of this book? I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. It was not what I thought it was going to be. But if you're looking for something that is just like really weird, really quite grim, is a horror book, but like isn't like monsters and like scary things, but is still like creepy and unhinged, I would recommend this book. But Leah and Miri. Leah goes on deep sea missions months at a time. One of these deep sea missions goes wrong. She's missing under the ocean for months on end. She finally comes back. She's a different person. I'm just going to talk about some books that I didn't necessarily enjoy, but I'm still going to include them because they definitely fit the vibe of autumn. Just because I didn't enjoy them doesn't mean that other people won't. Firstly, we have Witch by Finbar Hawkins. From what I remember of this, it's a revenge tale. Mother gets murdered. She decides to go after the men that did it. This is a YA novel. Apparently I said it was quite brutal considering it was YA. This is what I wrote in my review in 2021. I put at the end of my review, this wasn't a bad book, it's just not what I wanted from it. If you read the synopsis and think it's for you, give it a go. We have The Deathless Girls by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. This is a Brides of Dracula retelling, I believe. I thought it was going to be witchy when I picked it up, and I read it in 2021, quite a few years ago, and it was also before I read Dracula, so I had no I didn't know The Brides of Dracula, I didn't know it was a Brides of Dracula retelling, I didn't know it was going to be vampiric, I thought it was going to be witchy, so I was kind of disappointed by this one. This is one that I might reread, because now sounds like I would enjoy it. Witchborn by Nicholas Bowling. This is another witchy one. Mother is burnt at the stake, I believe. The main character ends up in an asylum in London. I think it's set in like Tudor times. Elizabethan times. Yes, Elizabethan. So if you like witches and Elizabethan London and an alternative history type take on things, this one. The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. I've only read the first one. I do own the second and the third. We're here. I am planning on reading the rest of the series. Actually, I'm planning on reading the next one and then making up my mind from there. But I wasn't like massively into the first one. I was kind of disappointed by it. But again, I know some people absolutely love this and it is the perfect time to read it. So, The Atlas 6. And then finally, The Society of Soulless Girls, or Society for Soulless Girls by Laura Stevens. This is a Sapphic Jekyll and Hyde retelling. For me, this book kind of fell off a cliff in the middle of it, but this is the perfect time to read it because it's a Jekyll and Hyde retelling. It's dark academia, it's also Sapphic, which is a win, but it just wasn't for me. I was a bit disappointed, but it might be for you. And for the final segment of this video, with my bookshelves as the backdrop, I want to do some quick fire books on my TBR that are to be read at this time of year. Firstly, Phantom Hearts by Rosie Talbot and Sarah Maxwell. This is a graphic novel. It's sapphic, spooky, ghosty, perfect time to read it. It literally turned up at my door a couple of days ago and I'm probably going to pick it up today. Some sequels that I need to read, quick fire. We have Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn, the sequel to Legendborn. We have 12 Bones by Rosie Talbot, the sequel to 16 Souls. Misrule by Heather Walter. This is the sequel to Malice. Sapphic Sleeping Beauty villain retelling. This Wicked Fate by Kaylin Bayron. This is the sequel to This Poison Heart, which is a sort of Little Shop of Horrors mythology type book. really need to get to the sequel. Perfect time of year to read it. Like I said, the sequel to the Atlas 6, which is the Atlas Paradox, I think, or is it the Atlas Complex? One of those two. Some books that are not usually in my, it's not usually what I reach for, but I'm making the effort to this spooky season, are festive romances. Things like Payback's a Witch and This Spells Disaster. Both of these are witchy, both of these are sapphic. I'm gonna give them a go. I started reading The Christmas Swap by Talia Samuels at Christmas last year. Didn't finish it, and I'm planning to pick it up again at Christmas, but I actually was kind of enjoying reading a festive romance. If you love a festive rom-com, this also fits into that category. The Dead Romantics. I think this is straight. I think it is. But still willing to give it a go. You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kanan Bayron. This is like a slasher. I'm interested by this one because I recently read Let's Split Up, and that was meant to be like a slasher, but it didn't really feel slashery to me. And I'm like, does slasher work in book format, or does it have to be a film? But I'm gonna give this a go and see if my theory is correct. The Evocations, I think that's what this is called, by Crystal Sutherland. This is a really beautiful Evernight, which is Illumicrate's horror box. It's their edition. It's horror. Spooky season. Perfect time to read it. Some proofs that I should probably get to, especially because most of these have come out now. We have Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. This came out last year in October, and I think it's currently the Waterstones fantasy book of the month, but I have a proof, so probably good time to pick this up. Immortal Dark. Again, this is a proof. This came out in September this year. This is Black Vampires. It's also, I think, Dark Academia, because I think there's a school involved. Sounds brilliant. We have The Undetectables. I feel like this is ghosty. I might be wrong, but it gives sort of like murder mystery but with ghosts. It's also queer. This came out in September of last year, and then I think the sequel is coming out or has just come out. Another, I think, witchy rom-com. This is Playing the Witch Card by KJ DeColatina. When did this come out? This came out in September of last year. Oh! Bat Eater by Carly Barker. This is a horror. It comes out in January of next year, so it's not out yet. But this is based on The Hungry Spirit, which is like a mythological slash like ghost story. Sounds really cool, and I think it might be, well, it has a cleaning product on the front, so I don't know whether it has anything to do with COVID. Yeah, it's righteous battle cry aimed at the racist heart of the pandemic hellscape, so sounds great. Those are all the ones that have caught my eye from the proof shelf that I feel are fit for spooky season and are definitely ones that I would reach for at this time of the year. So, those are all books I either recommend, suggest, or want to read during spooky season. Hopefully you will find something that you will be able to enjoy. And I feel like I should end this by saying, for me, spooky season begins in September and ends, well, briefly pauses in December for Christmas, then resumes in January and continues until March. So for me, that is spooky season. But I do understand that for some people, spooky season is only really September, October, maybe November at a push. If you made it to the end of what I am imagining is quite a long video that features probably over 100 books, thank you very much for watching. Comment, let's have a secret message. Comment a pumpkin emoji, or just pumpkin if you don't have emojis slash don't know how emojis work. That's fun. And if you have any autumnal, spooky season, cozy season recommendations you think I'll like, then let me know in the comments. Especially if you've got any sapphic recommendations, because I just like reading sapphic books. I think that's everything from me. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, then give it a thumbs up and also subscribe if you haven't already, because I had a little peek at my analytics and it's like 5% of people that watch my video are subscribed, so let's at least try and bump that up to like 10, because it really does help. Like, I know everyone says that, but it actually does. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Happy reading! Ooh.